Dear Thầy, dear Sangha, so we come back to our presentations. This time we will learn together about the life and practice of Zen Master Tang Hoi. In the previous one about Zen Master Linchi Lamte, I made a very important mistake. I mistook Hebei province to Hobak, which is Hubei. Hubei province is where we have Wuhan, the city with the coronavirus outbreak. But Hebei is not Hubei. Hebei province is farther up north and next to Hubei province. So my apology to all my Vietnamese and Chinese friends about this mistake. Thank you. Zen Master Tang Hoi was not very well known until recently when we start to read about his life thanks to Thầy Nhất Hạnh. Thầy wrote a book in Vietnamese first, Thiền sư Tang Hoi, which was later translated into English, Master Tang Hoi. He talked about Tang Hoi's life and practice during a winter retreat in Plum Village in 1994 going into 1995. So we have to situate the ancient kingdoms of Vietnam in order to see where Tang Hoi is all about. We start with the kingdom of Văn Lang and Hồng Bàng, spanning up to 2000 years before the Christian era. During the Hồng Bàng time, we had 16 generations of kings Hùng. We say in Vietnamese 16 đời vua Hùng Vương, which end up in around the 7th century before the Christian era. Then we have the kingdom of Thục. The Thục took over Hồng Bàng and transformed it into Âu Lạc. And they also later renamed Âu Lạc as Nam Việt at around 179 before the Christian era. At the year 111, the Han Empire took Nam Việt and established a new and much larger administrative territory called Jiao Yu, Giao Chỉ, comprising Quảng Đông, Quảng Xí, Quảng Tây, Hainan Island, đảo Hải Nam, and the capital is located in Luy Lâu, which is today Thuận Thành. And there, between the 1st and the 2nd century in the Christian era, there was an important arrival of Indian culture. And during that time already, Jiao Yu was a colony of China. And this colony continued for 1,000 years, from 111 before the Christian era to around 939 of the Christian era. During that time, the people in Nam Việt stood up and fought against the Chinese colonization. There were several uprisings, and here I mention only the one led by the Trung sisters in the year 40 of the Christian era. The Trung sisters Trưng Trác and Trưng Nhị succeed and got the independence from China for only 3 short years, because afterward the Han forces overrun the Trung sisters and took over Nam Việt again. During the colonization by the Han Empire, we observed a significant infiltration of Chinese culture into Vietnam. Around the year of 229, the Han dynasty was overthrown by the Wu dynasty. Jiao Yu Zhao Ji belonged to East Wu, Đông Ngô, and Lui Lâu was moved to Giang Ye in Bang Chang. Bang Chang is called Bang Thang in Vietnamese. And so we also observe the arrival of Buddhism from India to Vietnam. During the 1st century, the monks come by sea, by trade routes with the traders. And also we know during the 3rd century there was 2 renowned Mahayana Buddhist centers that were founded in India. One is called the Amaravati and the other one is Nagarjuna Konda centers. The monks arrived in Vietnam with the traders to Lui Lâu, and among the traders there was Tang Hoi's father, who came all the way from Sogdia, which is today Uzbekistan. And in Lui Lâu he married to a Vietnamese woman, who later gave birth to Tang Hoi. In the year 137, in the Christian era, the Han dynasty began to collapse, and thanks to the upheaval in China, there was a massive arrival of Chinese into Vietnam. Among them there are several scholars, and there was one particular famous one named Mu Zi, Mâu Tử. In the year 165, he came to Vietnam and he was teaching Confucianism and Taoism, and he also wrote a book called Dispelling Doubts. And this was considered as the first book on Buddhism written in Chinese and published in Lui Lâu. China also nominated a governor named Shi Si, Sĩ Nhiếp, to be governing the whole Zhao Ju. And fortunately, Sĩ Nhiếp was a supporter of Buddhism. And thanks to this support of Buddhism in Zhao Yu, we start to see several Buddhist centers being built, one in Lui Lâu at the place now named as Dharma Cloud Temple or Chùa Dâu, where Tang Hoi spent most of his time studying and translating several sutras from Sanskrit into Chinese. There's another one in Luoyang, and a second one in China in Bang Chang. The one in Bang Chang was later having Tang Hoi as a leading monk. Tang Hoi was invited by the king at that time named Sơn Hào. Sơn Hào in Vietnamese Tôn Hào. Tôn Hào is not a supporter of Buddhism, and he would like to see someone debating Tang Hoi. So he sent and forced intellectual Giang Du, in Vietnamese Trương Dục, to debate Tang Hoi in order to discredit Tang Hoi's teaching. But the king failed. Tang Hoi won over Yang Yu, and become famous afterwards. Tôn Hạo, Sơn Hào, right after asked to take refuge and receive the mindfulness trainings from Tang Hoi. Imagine, the king. So Tang Hoi in the end passed away in Nanjing, and following his path, we had several known Zen masters such as Sang Yu, Ming Chi, Quang Yi, Xuan Ye, and Fa An. Today the temple in Pengcheng was destroyed already due to the violent political upheaval in South China around the 19th century. So basically, Jiao Yu is at the crossroad and became the cradle where a lot of Buddhists are assembled, and they start to move on to farther northern China. A biography written by Hui Hao gave an account about Tang Hoi, who he said was the one who established the first Buddhist center in Jiangyi, the capital of Wu. So during his life, he wrote 2 books. One is called Collection of the Six Paramita, and then in that collection, he also wrote an essay named The Way of Realizing Meditation. He also wrote the preface of the Anapanasati Sutta. Scholars in Vietnam very rarely mention Tang Hoi, unfortunately. But we had to wait until the 14th century, where and when we were told about Chân Hoi in the book named Thiền Uyển Tập Anh, Flowers in the Garden of Meditation, in which we learn about Tinidaluchi School, Vinitaruchi, Vô Ngôn Thông School, Tang Shigao School, and also Tang Hoi's teaching were well mentioned. The followers of all those schools of meditation became later the bamboo forest tradition known as Trúc Lâm in Vietnamese. One anecdote: in the 11th century, the queen of Lý dynasty, đời nhà Lý, asked the question, what the roots of Buddhism in Vietnam? And the monk Zen master Chí Không, who were the advisor of the king and the queen, responded, dear queen, talking about the roots of Buddhism in Vietnam, we should always mention Mu Di, Mâu Tử. We should always mention Tang Hoi. And then we can go on and mention Vinitarusi, Tinidaluchi, and later Pháp Hiền, etc., etc. So I am finishing off here and say goodbye to you and wishing you again a safe stay and be well. Vin is bowing out. Thank you for your listening.